Hello and welcome everybody. I'm Dr. Katherine Horton. And before we start today, let me check the audio because if anything is going to be sabotaged, it's going to be the broadcast today where I'm mocking MI6 flat out. So let me just wait for it to load on YouTube. I think you should be able to see me in a moment. Why does it not load? Sorry, this is taking longer than it normally does. Okay, now it's coming.
You should be able to see me.
Yes, excellent. It sounds like you guys can hear me. Brilliant. Okay, so let's get started. So today it's a wonderful, very sunny day in Switzerland. It's a wonderful, weekend, a long weekend for some people. And it's, the mood today, I will not talk about anything desperately serious. Okay, I want to put in a bit of news, but I also would like to encourage you all, despite the torture and despite what they want to do to us, not to let yourself be totally ground down. Keep your humor, and most importantly, keep your sarcasm, because the one thing that psychopaths absolutely hate is ridicule and mockery. In a sense, psychopaths are people who take themselves extremely seriously. They think they rule the world, and being mocked by one of us to psychopath is like for us being mocked by our toaster, okay, or the fridge. It's really annoying, and you think, I am so much better than this, I don't have to listen to my toaster. But nevertheless, if you can grind them down just with utter sarcasm, that's a good thing. Okay, so this is the remit today. Today will be very light-hearted. But before we start, I would like to put out a couple of things that are nevertheless very, very serious and need your support. Let me share my screen and draw your attention to a couple of things that the first one is in English, the second one is in German, but it's both are equally relevant. Let me just share my screen and show you. So the first one is a new presentation by Professor James Fetzer, which he just sent to me. I just received it. And this is a presentation that he gave, and the video was uploaded on 2 or 3 days ago on 30th of March 2019. And the title is The Sandy Hook Pozner versus Fetzer lawsuit and why it matters. Now, this is very, very important to watch for all of you who are watching the systematic destruction of our legal system and of our rights, because in this presentation, as you can see, I only had time to watch the first 12 minutes myself yet because I've just received the link, but already in the first 12 minutes, I got to know that this guy, Pozner, is systematically taking down the videos by Professor James Fetzer, and more than that, he or the people who launched the court case are actively gloating that their so-called honor network, whereby honor is an acronym which stands for HONR, have taken down, I think, 10,000 media items, whereby one video would count as one item. So in other words, what we are seeing here, hidden behind this lawsuit, is not just one guy trying to sue James Fetzer, but it's an entire operation. And that should ring the CIA bell, okay? It really reeks like the CIA because it's very obvious here that they are employing troll factories. So trolls can sometimes come on your site and, as undoubtedly will happen today as well, and they will be in the chat and talking nonsense or hurling abuse at people. That is trolling. But what is also trolling is to lead to the targeted shutdown of websites, okay? This happened to me. My Twitter account has been suspended, and this is now, will be subject of litigation. But my Twitter account has been suspended after 2 malicious individuals put in a complaint about tweets that had nothing to do with them. They were third parties to the tweets. And the tweets they used as trigger had absolutely nothing to do with individuals. They weren't mentioned, individuals weren't mentioned. And nevertheless, they used it to trigger my Twitter suspension. Now, both of these individuals were foolish enough to gloat about their actions in writing subsequently, and I have submitted this evidence to Twitter. But one of these individuals well, an account that names itself Adam Douglas that previously also had Masonic symbolism plastered, and I think he even says he's a Mason. He also went out of his way to notify me via email that he keeps submitting complaints about my channel on YouTube, on BitChute, on Vimeo, on Gab, and he also did on Twitter. And he was gleeful that I have been suspended on Twitter. So that is trolling. It is malicious actions, and any company, even, okay, if Twitter were acting in good faith, which I think we have evidence to argue that they absolutely are not. But even if they were acting in good faith, it is always possible to trick a company with your complaints into thinking, oh, this person is complaining, so that must be the culprit. And it's actually the other way around. These people are highly malicious. One guy who submitted a complaint was acting in retaliatory fashion after I had submitted a complaint about him for ganging up. He's a toxicologist in the US, a doctor, a medical doctor, and with medical nurses, he ganged up on a medical student when she was raising doubts about, the safety of vaccines. And the Twitter bots, it's not even discourse. It was literally just attack and abuse on this person, on the student who, also has prior trauma. And I knew that. And the way they acted was so inappropriate. And it was also during working hours that I thought, hang on, we have a medical doctor during working hours literally abusing a medical student. On what planet is this acceptable? And open brackets, as a toxicologist, you also have the qualifications to cause serious harm to patients. So having a psychopathic doctor is not safe absolutely anywhere. So I took all the tweets and the messages in the background, and I submitted a formal complaint about this guy to his employers at the university. And it was entirely around this, really vicious abuse, and also how this entire thing was coordinated. So you really had, two medical nurses and this medical doctor gang up in a targeted fashion. And just, the vitriol and this psychopathic sadism that came to the fore was utterly revolting and shocking. So that was that. And this guy waited for months and months. And I think he must have just, followed me on Twitter, waiting for the time when he can submit a complaint. And then he struck together with this guy. But the timing is so fine-tuned that actually, for me, the image is emerging more and more that both the account called Adam Douglas and this other guy are actually part of the same abuse network, which would, in one fell swoop, explain how he could gang up with these malicious doctors, okay, or nurses rather. He's the doctor. So anyway, that's my Twitter suspension. But the setting up of troll factories that go after people, either really trash their sites or try to by just, talking nonsense, as you can sometimes see in the chat on my YouTube videos, or in the comments below, or by hurling abuse, or by doing slander campaigns, or by targeted community action leading to the suspension of accounts. Well, this has been done on an industrial scale by GCHQ, as has been proven by the Snowden leaks. So in the leaks, you will find an entire document talking about this. Okay, the GCHQ troll factories, and about, I always forget, this is 3 or 5 Ds, but it's deny, destroy, and denigrate, or whatever the hell, right? It was basically their mission statement, and their founding principles was to trash something, utterly trash it senselessly, like a bunch of psychopathic morons, using taxpayer money to basically act in a criminal fashion. So mobbing is already, unlawful. Mobbing a person, psychological terrorism is unlawful. But these guys are actually causing, harm to people's public image, harm to people's public activity, their outreach activity, their, totally valid forming of groups and campaign groups to try to protect others or bring issues to into the public's knowledge. And the fact that this is being done using UK taxpayers' money means that a UK state organ, which is the Government Communication Headquarters, GCHQ, with emphasis on government, is actually engaged in hostile, unlawful, and criminal action against its own people, which is high treason, and against other people, which is a malicious action of war. Okay, so subverting another country's public discourse in a malicious fashion and causing, economic harm to another country or the income of the people in that country is an act of war when it's done systematically by a government institution. Now, of course, behind the scenes, we know that GCHQ, just like MI6, is not really part of the government. If it were, the government would know what they are doing, but the government doesn't. Okay, neither the judiciary nor even the government really knows what GCHQ and MI6 are doing, which means they are not under control of the government. So the question is, under whose control are they? Who knows what they are doing? And first of all, it is they themselves. They know what they're doing, or at least so one hopes, at least in the moments when they don't go into a, psychopathic, complete AWOL rage. But there must be another entity that knows what they're doing. And I have argued for a very long time that MI6 and GCHQ are actually the modern fronts of the old intelligence network that was there before they were founded. Now, what was there before British intelligence as we know it was founded was Vatican intelligence, okay? The Jesuits, okay? The Jesuits are military intelligence. It's the surveillance network. But like every surveillance network, they put in fronts, okay? And they try to take influence on their enemies and the territory of their enemies. And these fronts are organizations like the CIA, like MI6, like, KGB, called the FSB these days, and so on, and like Chinese intel. No single government knows what their secret services are doing, okay? So MI6 and GCHQ are part of Vatican intel, right? There's a superstructure, there's a spy superstructure that set them up and that knows what they're doing and is giving them instructions. But the British government doesn't have the foggiest clue, right? In actual fact, the British government most likely got implanted by them. So this is the situation. For those people who are new, okay, I want you to have this image. Now, what has all this to do with James Fetzer, right? Now, what this has to do with James Fetzer is what I'm trying to tell you is that if you listen to this presentation, and you watched Professor Fetzer recount this and give testimony about the systematic shutdown of accounts with this backstory, you should immediately think, hang on, that sounds just like the GCHQ troll factories. And you should also immediately think, hang on, shutting down 10,000 accounts is a lot of work. So there must be an army behind that. And by definition, this having an army completely transcends the possibilities of this person who ostensibly is suing James Fetzer. Okay? So in other words, what you should start thinking immediately as you listen to this, and put one and one together, you should start thinking about the precise mechanism, the volume of this operation against James Fetzer, the manpower involved, and the money involved. And you should immediately remember the Snowden leaks about the GCHQ troll factories. Okay? So in other words, if you think about it, and listen to this, you might come to the same conclusion that I have come to, which is that actually what we're looking at is a CIA operation here. Okay, I think the Sandy Hook false flag is a CIA operation, and Pozner, who is now trying, desperately to sue Fetzer to somehow put a lid on people finding out that Sandy Hook was a big fat hoax set up by the CIA. Well, these people are now trying to shut down these videos, right? But it's, again, just a game of whack the rat, okay? Now, for those of you who don't know, right, Whack the Rat is a game that you might play at a fairground. And it's about, you know, you've got a field in front of you and they give you a hammer. And then from the holes, right, rats pop up, you know, at different points on this field. And you have to whack them over the head in time before they disappear again below the surface, right? And when you whack a rat over here, another one pops up over there. And it's, you know, a game of speed, okay? But these games of whack the rat, right, is what the intelligence agencies are now doing, being utterly, totally moronic and foolish, not realizing that it is physically impossible for them to compete with the network mathematics. They are competing against network mathematics by trying to do this, because as soon as you have censored a video, well, it has already been viewed so many times, it has been spread, and then you censor this, you activate everybody who has seen this video, and then they realize, oh my goodness, this video was really important. So either they made a copy and upload it straight away, or else next time Professor Fetzer puts out a video, they spread it even faster. Or they start talking about how, you know, there are shady groups censoring all these videos. And again, you activate more and more people. And this whole thing is a non-linear process, which means it is physically impossible to put the genie back into the box. It is literally like setting off a nuclear reaction, right? Like a nuclear explosion, and then trying to put the neutrons back into the bottle. It is not going to work, guys. You are basically fucked and will get fucked. Not you, listeners. I'm now talking about the CIA and MI6. And you will get fucked at, you know, at speeds that will just rocket up exponentially. Okay? So that when the system changes in a nonlinear system, at first it's really, really slow, and then it picks up speed, but at some point comes the hockey stick turn on when it just goes woof exponentially, you know? And that's the vertical where it's absolutely physically impossible to control it. And we have now long past this point of no return. We're in the hockey stick, and everybody's finding out what has been going down all these decades and centuries, and it's absolutely physically impossible to ever undo that ever again. We are already in the process of this nuclear explosion. So the Pozner lawsuit is not just absolutely horrifically moronic and just trying to hassle Professor Fetzer, but also it is so utterly counterproductive, it is unbelievable. So now, our task in this is to realize what's going on, to realize that these guys behind Pozner have essentially already lost, right? And they are actually shooting themselves in the foot every time we hear anything from them. You know, they let themselves be known. But now our task is to bring about and expedite and speed up this absolutely exponential explosion of insight and information. Okay? So the way to do that right now is to really, you know, get a lot of light bulbs to light up, is to listen to the presentation by Professor Fetzer. And if you don't have much time, just listen to the first 10 minutes and listen to the passage about this network behind Pozner, this honor network, whereby the second O is missed out. It's HONR, right? That is curiously acting down to a T, just like the GCHQ troll factories, which almost smells like GCHQ money. So what's the connection between GCHQ and the CIA operation over there in the US around Sandy Hook? Well, the connection has already been established by the NSA whistleblower William Binney, who said that NSA and GCHQ are actually one and the same organization, you know? Then there are also wonderful presentation. There's one presentation by, oh, I have to show you this one because it fits the story. I forgot to bring it up. So if you go to the American intelligence media, okay, hang on. It is American intelligence media. They had a wonderful interview with a guy called McKibben on the 5 Eyes. Okay, so the 5 Eyes, it's this one here. It's called Unmasking. Yeah. Blinding the 5 Eyes Hydra. And so here, let me show you, okay, because there is a wealth of information in this interview, and I should make a separate presentation about this, but it's very important you absorb the information in here. In this, this guy called Michael McKibben, okay, you can see the details down here. okay, is presenting research about how American intelligence was actually set up, okay, and what the Five Eyes actually are. For those of you who don't know, the Five Eyes are an intelligence syndicate between American, Canadian, British, Australian, and New Zealand intelligence. It's ostensibly an information exchange, right? The sharing of information, but in actual fact, it's a big fat fucking human trafficking operation, okay? And the big fat fucking organized crime syndicate. That's what it is in real life. But ostensibly, it's just about sharing information, okay? Which basically sharing information is what you need to do if you run an organized crime cartel. You're involved in, nation state level human trafficking. But that aside, now what I want to point out here is that Michael McKibben and his investigators have dug up the details, the declassified documents about, the activities of Five Eyes and how American intelligence was set up. And, lo and behold, they discovered that actually it was set up by British intelligence. What a big fat fucking surprise, right? But anyway, so I have been stating for a very long time that America is actually a colony. It is a colony to this day of the British Empire. Okay, and you can argue against that until you turn blue in the face, but that is just how it's done. And this is why every penny of the IRS money goes to London. Okay, in actual fact, it goes to the City of London, which is an extraterritorial tax haven owned by the Vatican. But nevertheless, it's in London. And through that, right, you can see that what is actually happening is that the US is a colony. Money is being sucked out of the US to pay for the colonial masters in Britain, who in turn pay their colonial masters, which is the Vatican crime cartel. Okay? And ultimately, all this ends up in the Vatican Bank. Now, in this interview, they won't go as far as the Vatican Bank, and they won't go as far as actually tracking down the owners of the British individuals whom they have found. And I actually do mean owners. But they find out that actually, not just has American intelligence been set up and this Five Eyes network been set up by the British, in the documents that they found, not a single name of the Americans has been classified, but all the names of the British are. Okay, and that's because they're your colonial masters. Okay, why should they reveal themselves to the slaves? They won't. Okay, but this is another bit of indication. So, in other words, we have two links. Number one is the work of Michael McKibben saying that actually American intelligence has been set up by British intelligence. There's the statement from William Binney separately about how NSA and GCHQ are one and the same organization. And then we have on the ground, in practice, this behavior of shutting down accounts systematically, running a huge troll factory through a so-called honor network, which is strongly redolent of the GCHQ document about running troll factories. And you can immediately see that, well, if American intelligence and the CIA was set up by the British, you shouldn't be surprised that the British template is being deployed in America. Okay? Now, the reason why this is so very, very important for you to get your head around is it's multiple reasons. Number one, if you're a victim, and this could be any victim, not just the victim of directed energy weapon attacks and implanting and neurotech assaults, you can be the victim of intellectual property theft, like I think Michael McKibben was himself, or industrial espionage, or sabotage, commercial sabotage, and if you trace it to American intelligence, you can immediately put British intelligence as another respondent in your court case, okay, as your colonial masters. Now, the other implication also is that now in the intelligence world, more and more evidence is coming to the fore, confirming what I've said all along, which is that American intelligence is just a little puppy. It's a puppy that was set up by the European intelligence networks. okay, when America was colonized, and then eventually the British, took over and have large control of the US, which is why you all speak English and not German or Spanish, So this is how it is, but also know that once you tracked it to the British, you cannot stop there, or you will just again end up, half blind. You have to find out who owns the British, who owns the crown, and they in turn are owned by the Pope. Okay, so all roads lead to Rome, and you will find out that actually all this is controlled by Vatican intelligence and the Vatican Bank. So already in the world of finance, it is known that all the central banks are not independent. They are branch offices of one bank. Okay. And they also found out that actually all the commercial banks are not independent. They are all owned by the same super entity. So in the world of finance, they already use the term the one bank to describe this entity that owns all the central banks. And I really mean all of them. Right? Even the one in Russia, it owns all the central banks, and it also owns all the commercial banks. That's the one bank. And it's one and the same corporation. Now, in the world of intelligence, I already explained a very, very long time ago, back in 2016, that, in the world of intelligence, you will also end up with a super monopoly. And that's because in the world of spying, size matters, because the bigger you are, the more infiltrators you can plant, and the more money you have, and the more information and influence you have. So in other words, when America was, conquered and stolen from the Red Indians, the people who did the stealing were not freelance entrepreneurs. They were sent there by the royal households. Now, the royal households were already owned wholesale by the Vatican, okay? And also the royal households were under the control of the Vatican Intelligence Agency, aka the Jesuits, okay? So when now these royal households go out and conquer America, do you really think that Vatican Intel is just going to stay back and go like, oh, yeah, let's just wait for them to return and tell us what's out there? Well, of course not, right? Of course, they're going to send their spies right in there, will plant their spies to keep on the base and in these forts and these outposts, right? And they will be there the day a ship arrives in America. Okay, so both the royal households had their spy networks and Vatican Intel had their spy networks, right? And actually the Vatican is always spying on the royal households. So there's two parallel systems, but really all owned by one and the same entity, So this is how America was colonized. It started, with the spies present from day one, because it's such a big, exciting new business plan. The Vatican would have never, ever wanted to miss out. Okay, so this is what you have to get into your head. And we're going back to the 15th century here. So by the time the CIA set up, okay, I think when was that? In the 20th century by this Nazi Galen, right? By the time you get to the freaking 20th century, like 500 fucking years later, do you think that Vatican Intel has just withered and died, given that the Vatican is still around and is stonkingly rich? No, of course not, right? So it was there all along. It was the biggest network. And once you have a mega system, a mega spy system, and you set up a new little puppy organization called the CIA, well, what do you think's going to happen when you have this big spying organization already there? Well, the setting up of the CIA will start with infiltration from day one, right? So if you think about it for longer than 3 seconds in terms of systems, it should be clear, absolutely clear to all of you that neither MI6 nor the CIA nor the Russian KGB is independent. They are all entirely governed by Vatican Intel. Okay, they are owned wholesale. So in other words, in the world of spying, there's only the one agency. Just like in finance, there's only the one bank. Okay, and guess what? The one bank owns the one agency, right? Because the spies do stuff not for fun, but for money. Okay, and the money is in the Vatican Bank. So in other words, with this, just thinking about it in terms of systems, we can figure out who these players are. Okay, and I was making this point to American investigators about the CIA and the NSA already like a year and a half ago, you know. And I was saying, guys, stop thinking about the CIA on top of the world because they are just a puppy. Okay, I mean, look at it. They had to import a Nazi Galen, right, to set up all these, you know, American spying organizations. They had what? They had to learn from a Nazi from Germany how to be really Nazi in the US. Okay, well, surely that's not it. But what it actually is that that guy was closer to the headquarters because the Nazis were directly funded from Switzerland, right, from the Vatican HQ. So in other words, Galen was closer to HQ, and he was sent by HQ to set up a Nazi organization in the US modeled on the German Gestapo. And then when Galen was done, he set up the BND, which is, you know, the follow-on organization from the Gestapo, and has 3 swastika on their territory in the form of buildings. You know, you can just see it from satellites or Google Maps. So that's how it all hangs together. Okay, so keep that in mind. So now, when we think about really, you know, pissing off MI6, we have to remember that, first of all, MI6 is kind of the, you know, the mothership over the CIA, really. You know, I mean, there's again the size thing of the CIA is all so much bigger and seems so much powerful, but ultimately in the world of spies and classification, they don't really know where their orders ultimately come from, right? At no level, really. They just haven't got a clue. The entire system is set up so that they can be controlled by very few individuals who can keep their identity hidden. Okay, so it is not that surprising to learn that actually the entirety of the big, you know, CIA is controlled from a much smaller HQ in London, you know, which in turn is controlled by another HQ in Switzerland, you know. So this is how it hangs together. But anyway, okay. So when we try to piss off MI6, okay, if you're in the US, you should realize that that is, you know, to all intents and purposes, your mother organization. Okay, like one down from the HQ. Okay, the Vatican HQ. So and also, you know, I would like to emphasize again that when you are litigating against American intel, you always should include British intel as well. And I'm pretty sure that over the coming weeks and months, more and more information will come to the fore, because now we're in this exponential hockey stick situation. So the information, the floodgates have already burst, and now we're just going to be swamped by all this truth coming out. But you guys who are listening and investigators out there, start going after these links, start going back historically and see where it leads you to. Okay. And I think over the coming weeks, more and more information will come out about the links between MI6 and the Vatican Intel Network, headquartered in Switzerland. And circumstantial evidence for that is already people like the police chief, the UK police chief, Bernard Hogan-Ho, retiring to Switzerland with a multi-million, you know, pound pension. Okay, that I have to say, given that he didn't really do any police work in the UK, right? He effectively, you know, embezzled from the UK taxpayer. But anyway, the fact that he would retire here in Switzerland is not by coincidence. And the fact that all these, you know, dictators from around the world are retiring or, you know, located here in Switzerland is also not coincidence. They are just drawing closer to the HQ from whence they get their instructions. Okay, so this is how it is. Anyway, so this is the all this, right, was this news item about this talk by Professor Fetzer about the Pozner versus Fetzer lawsuit and why it matters. And I really encourage you to follow this lawsuit, but also read between the lines and you know, discover its true relevance, its true importance and what it reveals. You know, because if you start doing a bit of thinking, you will just see connections that will, you know, lead back to the UK and show you the entire super architecture of this intelligence network. Okay, but anyway, another thing I wanted to tell you, okay, oh, sorry, let me just show you. So I want you to watch this, but I also want you to watch this one here called Unmasking the Five Eyes Beast, okay, by Michael McKibben, very important. I really wish this guy would write me an expert, you know, affidavit that I can use in court. That would be super, because what he and his investigators uncovered is directly relevant to the court cases. But anyway, now from news from Germany, Gerhard Ulrich has just put out a new appeal. Now, I apologize because this one here is in German. Okay, so this is now for the German listeners, but it's an appeal for a court case happening in Bamberg, Germany on the 13th of June in the afternoon. And the details are in here, and the lawyer who's mentioned there are 3 interviews with him by the journalist Volker Hoffmann, and that's the lawyer who is involved, and he's also been charged. Now, you can listen to the lawyer here. There are 3 parts to this interview that was done in 2017. But also, what is here included in this email was a testimony under oath, written under oath by Helga Harders, who is also charged along with this lawyer, her lawyer actually, Claus Plantiko. Okay? And just read the details, because the actual event that triggered this was what I would call a Nazi-style assault by pseudo-police. These were 2 people who couldn't identify themselves. They didn't have ID on them, who pulled over Helga Harders and her husband, tried to drag them out of the car. When it became clear that Helga was filming the entire thing, they tried to get hold of the phone. It was literally a thug assault, absolutely unbelievable. And this testimony by Helga Harders is here, and you can just read it in detail. It's 4 pages long, absolutely mind-blowing. And you can either turn this copy and paste this into Google Translate, or if you're German, you can just read it directly. But on this occasion, I invite you to familiarize yourself with this lawyer here, who's apparently fighting for those who suffer injustice, and I suspect that's why he's being targeted. But also, if you are in Bamberg in Germany, or near there, so I can show you where Bamberg is, I ask you to come to the court hearing. And okay, this is Bamberg. Okay, let me just zoom out. So it's near, just north of Nuremberg. Okay, here's Nuremberg, and that's Bamberg. So if you can come here on the 13th of June as a court observer, independent court observer, that would be very, very, very important. Okay, because I suspect that this entire court case is harassment, and I also strongly suspect that this entire pulling over of Helga Harders and her husband did not just happen by coincidence. Okay, I think what actually happened is that it was meant to be targeted harassment, and these people were on the harassment list prior, maybe without their knowledge. And I strongly suspect that this police unit, so-called, didn't just escalate this situation out of their own terms, but in fact acted by proxy for something else happening. And what I see more and more often is that police or pseudo-police would, create a situation, and specifically with the goal of then blowing it up into court cases and cause, untold, stress and financial expenses to the victims in a form of psychological terrorism and financial asset stripping. And this is pretty much what this sounds like to me. It's really crazy. And now what is extremely important is that the judges have a feeling, a really, tangible feeling that the entire public is watching. Okay? And whatever they do will be carried very, very far internationally, and only then can we hope to ensure that these judges don't do something utterly crazy. Okay, so please read the details because it's really, really mind-boggling. And when I just read it, I just thought, oh dear, so many details are again included there. Also, the running of so-called police in Germany that are not the state police and are not really, certified with their ID cards. And it's just, random people. So it's kind of mercenary armies running amok in Germany and harassing people supposedly with the blessing of the German police services. But, I don't think this is really how it's done. Now, somebody just put into the chat, the judges are a Masonic lodge, and that's, true. Oh, there's also somebody saying Helga had problems with the judicial system before. There are articles in the German press about it. Thank you so much for that contribution, because I shall look it up. I didn't know that there were already articles. The first thing I heard about this case was the email by, by Gerhard Ulrich this morning, which I've uploaded onto my website. And one of the things I wanted to show you also is how you can get to the let me just share my screen. I want to show you how to get to the link. I forgot to show you of Gerhard Ulrich's appeal. Okay, so it's the first top 2 documents, but you get to this website here, which is Gerhard Ulrich's site. If you go to my website called stop007.org, you scroll down to the court cases, which is this one here with the hammer, and then you find Gerhard Ulrich here. Okay. And then you can see all of his appeals. Oops, sorry, here in the index, it's the last link, and that's how you get here. Okay. So yes, responding to the other comment in the chat, that's right. The judges are very often Masons and part of Masonic lodges. If you like, I mean, the entire bar association is like one big Masonic lodge. And certainly in the UK, the Inns of Court are very much like, not just like a Masonic lodge, but even Templar temples. The inner temple, right? And so on. The middle temple, it has the word temple, in there. And they have the this ancient Templar church on their territory, and they are on the territory of the City of London, this extraterritorial tax haven hidden at the heart of London. That's where the Inns of Courts are, or I think, yeah, all of them are. I have to check the exact boundaries, but certainly the, the Middle Temple and the Inner Temple and so on. And you will find this Templar church with the Knights Templars, effigies on the floor right there, right next to these Inns of Court. So yeah, that's true. But then what these networks are doing is using existing systems for their own purposes. Okay, so now we have to force them to act for us. And the way to do that is to campaign, to really show them that we are watching, to go to these court cases, to write letters of complaint, to get the government and submit actual formal complaints about things and get the government to act, submit complaints to all the judiciary organs of control and self-control, which we all know never works, and then you can also campaign and absolutely ridicule and humiliate them. So now, returning to the original topic of how to ridicule MI6, okay, and Intel in general, I ridiculed them a lot of the times, but a couple of times it actually showed hardcore results. And it was, I believe it was in December 2018 that I'm a bit unsure about the date because, because of, I couldn't find the exact documents. I just have some hints. But anyway, there was Alex Younger, the head of MI6, gave a talk in the UK, and I've downloaded that talk from the government website, and I read through it, and I thought when you read these government talks on the surface, if you just read the words, they don't mean anything. It's literally an hour of talking without any sense. It's just this bump, this utter, total trite, blah, blah. And then I thought, what if it's actually one big feat of cartel signaling? Okay, what if there's actually a subtext that all these insiders in MI6 know very well? And when Alex Younger gives like a talk like that, it's almost like the mission statement or the plans for the activities ahead to its staff or to the government, as you like. And maybe there's much more subtext. So I ran with this, but then I also decided to do it publicly and, you know, on purpose, read perhaps the most humorous subtext into this entire speech. And I went through, and I don't know how many paragraphs it had, but many. I think it was 3 or 4 pages of the speech. And I went through paragraph by paragraph, and I translated it from meaningless government talk into what I said was the subtext I was reading. So there were several tweets like that. And what I discovered is that, and this is actually on Twitter. So this is the first time I actually thought, oh my goodness, you know, there's direct responses from these organizations, you know, to something they don't like. What happened is that my Twitter got shadow banned instantly. So the messages that I was sending out never arrived in the world. Okay. And it was just completely covered up. And curiously enough, I had the Twitter analytics on at the time, and I will show you what that looks like, or looked like at the time. I took a screenshot, which is this one here. And even so, this is the day here. I think it was the 5th of December, 2018. And the reason why I'm sure is because I got shadow banned a couple of times, you know, similarly. But this was the severest. And these organic impressions are all from the time when I retweeted the tweets forcibly myself. They were not when the tweets first went out. So afterwards, in the days, in the subsequent days, I managed to get a couple of views for these tweets. But on the day, the views were completely censored. It just went mute. I was just tweeting into the void, right? And you can see that here because at the time I had roughly, you know, just a very few tweets, I had somewhere between 10,000 and 20,000 views. Okay, and this shadow banning actually came when it was pretty much in the pretty late in the afternoon, if I remember correctly, and I had already reached 10,000. And as I started tweeting, this started going up because people thought it was amusing. And then woof, it got hit, and the views disappeared. They literally disappeared. The views that had already taken place disappeared, and this entire day got wiped. And you can see it as an overt hole. But what is hilarious is that when they did this, they did it in such a way that Twitter Analytics, which appears to run, you know, kind of separate from main Twitter, and you have to activate it in your Twitter account for it to run. Twitter Analytics running independently still showed how the tweets were actually appearing on the Twitter platform. So what happened is that when the shadow ban hit and I suddenly went from 10,000 views to 0, it stayed. And as the days progressed, this hole was migrating from the current day further and further back. And eventually I took a screenshot on the 21st of December saying the shadow banning is still visible. And I think this was the day when I took the piss out of Alex Younger's speech. So that was very curious because, number one, it showed me that they actually read my tweets, right? Which is not too surprising because I'm the only person complaining publicly week in, week out about MI6, right? So eventually they will hear about me. But also the childish reaction. And even though that particular, you know, stunt of mine of mocking that speech was really rather childish and not serious at all, it's still, you know, trampled on their balls enough that they couldn't let it stand. They had to wipe it off the internet. And that just shows you that mockery hurts them much more than you can imagine. Here, all the other days, I'm tweeting about them committing genocide and torturing victims and murdering victims freely, all these other days, and they let it shoot up to, you know, almost 3,000 views. They don't care. But the one day when I'm actually taking the mickey out of their chief executive, Alex Younger, that's when it goes so under the skin that they have to wipe it off the internet. Okay, so that again shows you that with these psychos, mockery is extremely painful, right? And it goes so against their self-loving nature that they just cannot let it stand. Okay, so I thought that is very interesting. And in the end, what I wanted to do is I wanted to, after I found this tweet, I thought, now at the time, the 3rd anniversary of the start of my court case against MI6 was coming up. And I had started my court case on the 19th of May, 2016. So, as the 19th of May was coming up, I was thinking, well, I should do something for the 3rd anniversary of this, and tongue in cheek, because the number 3 is just so important to the Masons and Intel, so I thought, okay, I should just, rub it in their face. And then I was thinking, okay, what could I do, right? So on the 19th, and actually, what was the trigger for this? I'll show you. Let me just find it on YouTube. Do you guys remember the this video? Hang on. Yes, here it is. Okay, so let me just bring it up for you. All right, so a long while back, I showed you, let me share my screen because this is important. Let's quickly remind ourselves and analyze it again. A while back, I showed you that, most curiously, MI6 put out their first ever recruitment video for intelligence officers. And they published this back in May 2018, okay? I will show you this recruitment video, and it's super creepy, okay? Super duper creepy. But you have to watch carefully. So for those of you who haven't seen it before, let me just show you. So this is now the video as it was put out by MI6 and publicized by the Daily Mail.
We are intelligence officers, but we don't do what you think. It's not keeping your cool in the shark tank. It's picking up on the silent cues that matter. Understanding others, helping them see things differently. It's exploring the world beyond your own. And if that sounds familiar, it's because you do it every day. MI6. Secretly, we're just like you.
Okay, so guys, what do you think of this job advert? Okay, now, if it weren't the organization that is human trafficking on a large scale, that's engaged in occult rituals of child rape and child murder, and is filling the so-called British press with their covert cartel signaling, I probably wouldn't, think twice about this advert. But given that these guys are members of an organized crime cartel and are ruthless serial killers, nothing in this job advert is what it seems, okay? So if we go through and just quickly analyze these 30 seconds, okay, look how it starts. So it starts with this James Bond-like theme about a shark, but the shark is a cartel symbol that you will find over and over. They do use a lot of animals in their cartel signaling, but the shark is there all the time. And typically it represents them, okay? Now here you can see the shark, prowling, and here you can see a little fish. Now, fish is a code word for little girl. Okay, when these secret societies like the St. Hubertus Club are talking about hunting and fishing, they are talking about the rape of young boys and young girls. Okay, hunting is to hunt for young boys, fishing is to hunt for young girls. Okay, so when you have this shark typically representing these intelligent serial killers, these ruthless killers, and you have a little fish, that's really the first association you should actually have talking about MI6.
We are intelligence officers.
And look, they say we are intelligence officers, and what you see is the shark. Now, the shark in the shot is approaching from the left, and if you know anything about art history, the stuff on the left is usually associated with the other party, and the stuff on the right is typically associated with you yourself. And that's because most people are right-handed, will look to the right first, and therefore will first identify with whatever is on the right-hand side. This has been used by painters for centuries, okay? So this is nothing new. But when you hear the voice saying, we are intelligence officers, and the shark drifts in from the left, they mean we're the sharks, okay? We are the sharks.
But we don't do what you think.
But we don't do what you think. Well, what do we think? Initially, naively about MI6 officers, we think that they are what? Protecting national security, that they keep the bad guys in other countries off our back. Well, you just heard it from the horse's mouth that they don't do what you think. Okay, so whatever they do, it's not that, guys.
It's not keeping your cool in a shark tank.
So, and after this, when you have this shark, and they just announced we don't do what you think, they show a little young boy. Oh, really? Well, I mean, okay. In this recruitment video, you will see only a mom, supposedly his mom, right? A young boy and a woman alone in an, aquarium. And because she's alone and I can't see any dad, I would almost guess, she's a single mom. So the only thing in this advert is a young boy and a single mom. Are these the people MI6 are trying to recruit right now? Boys below the age of, 8 or 6 and single moms? I don't think so. So what has this young boy to do with it? Well, after they just announced that they don't do what you think, if you look at the evidence from the victims, what they do is they do rape and ritually sacrifice young boys, especially from ethnic minorities, because, they're much easier prey. So I don't like this advert already. And look at the top of this little boy, it's in blood red. So what I'm reading is we are intelligence officers. We are a bunch of psychopathic, killer sharks, and we ritually sacrifice young boys, like, for example, this one here, whom we've, decorated in a little jumper that looks blood red and looks a bit like the robe or the hoods that we are portrayed of wearing in films like Eyes Wide Shut. That's what I'm reading so far.
It's picking up on the silent cues that matter.
It's picking up on the silent cues that matter, and this little boy took a step back because he was intimidated. And when you look carefully, this woman's eyes go wide. I mean, this is not a genuine micro expression because she's an actor and probably had to reshoot this ad 15,000 times. But nevertheless, what she is trying to act is fear and intimidation. All right? Now, after the sentence, silent cues that matter, and you have a fearful single mom and an intimidated young boy, and this is what MI6 are advertising themselves with, fuck me. I mean, talk about honesty, hey?
Understanding others. Helping.
So, understanding others, okay, now the entire situation is diffused, but nevertheless, the boy takes a step back and is grabbed by his mother. Now, also look at the colors, red and white. I mean, what coincidence that actually MI6, as I said, has been set up by Vatican Intel, which is headquartered in Switzerland, which has the flag red and white. Pure coincidence, right? But anyway, look at this advert. And really, when you know that MI6 has been involved and is involved in child trafficking, that previous heads of MI6 have been caught, and these rape children homes, right, to frequent these children homes, they are putting it out right there, okay, right in your eye. And then, of course, they laugh about it and try to diffuse it. But in the at the most tense moment and in the beginning of this video, it was all too clear what they were trying to say.
Them see things differently. It's exploring the world beyond your own. And if that sounds familiar, it's because you do it every day.
So explore the world beyond your own. Okay. Yeah, I think child trafficking networks are not really my world, right? Especially not running them. But then also look, the entire scenery here, okay? If you think about you have to shoot a recruitment ad for MI6, why the hell would you go and, go to a Shark Tank? Why? And why would you show only a young boy and a woman who's clearly full-time tasked with taking care of the young boy? Are these are the clientele you're trying to, or the potential intelligence officers you're trying to reach out to? Surely not, right? So there's a huge dollop of cartel signaling here. Now, the one thing that I haven't analyzed last time I talked about this is, these heads, and these heads are effigies or copies of the heads, or modeled on the heads on the Eastern Islands. And these are very famous heads on the Eastern Islands that were carved a long time ago by the indigenous people in a local quarry, and then transported to be facing out towards the sea. Okay, but here they are submerged underwater, whereas in the Eastern Islands, they are above water on the ground, right? They are vertically on the shoreline, vertically upright. So, of course, once you decide to shoot this film in a shark tank somewhere, you will use the general scenery of that shark tank. But given that they chose a shark tank, and not by coincidence, I also almost suspect they didn't choose this particular one by coincidence, okay? So perhaps there's a subtext behind these heads here. And the only subtext I can think about is that, okay, so they are talking, this is a hint towards the Easter Islands, okay? So what do we know about the Easter Islands? Well, that you can find these heads here, but also if you read the travel reports of Thor Heyerdahl, what he's talking about is that the Easter Islands have caves, a huge cave system underground. And many cave entries are known to the locals. And every family that lives there has its own cave system. So traditionally, these caves were used to for worship, to bury your dead and whatnot. But every family has its own system, which is kept secret and passed down through the family, through the lineage. Now, this was uncovered by Thor Heyerdahl, and he wrote a book about it. But it occurs to me that if you wanted to have, if you are looking for a remote submarine station, then having something where you can, dock your submarines and maybe, get some supplies and some air, but yet stay covert, would be a handy thing. And it would be really handy to pick an island that, because of prior volcanic activity, has all these caves and is kind of like porous rock with large cavities. Okay, so thinking about the Easter Islands submerged, the only thing I can think about is caves. Underwater caves may be used for submarine ports and may be used to build up a secret military base. Now, that's what I'm reading from this subtext here. Okay, so anyway, right? But then again, you would think that they use these military bases to, protect a country. Why the fuck would you have to be on the Eastern Islands? But then again, in the real world, MI6 is not really tasked with that, with counterterrorism and all this sort of stuff, because they don't need to be, because all intelligence agencies and militaries are controlled by one and the same organization. So once the KGB and Russian intel are controlled by the same corporation, you don't need to, waste your time being MI6 worrying about counterterrorism or counter-espionage or espionage from other countries, because it's all the same Masonic Vatican intel club anyway. It's like, a bank branch in London worrying about, sabotage and espionage from the same bank's branch in High Wycombe. It's not going to happen, is it? So given that this is the background, what are all these military bases for? And the answer is they are typically used for large-scale human trafficking, for Nazi-style human experimentation, for weapons research, weapons development, and generally to give psychopathic militaristic men a big, fat playground to go and masturbate in peace. That's how I would best describe it. Okay, so with this background and with this job advert, as it was coming up to my 3rd anniversary of the my litigation against MI6, I actually thought, my goodness, sorry, I've just seen that in the you could see this image set up about my computer being infected. Now that's just a fraudulent message that just keeps popping up since the last hack on this device. But anyway, so what I wanted to say is that after I saw this job advert, it occurred to me that actually, if I really wanted to retaliate, I should just apply to MI6 following their job advert, and of course use the letter to say what I think. So I did. I wrote a job application. It's here. Okay, it's several pages long. It has my CV on the back, and I applied to MI6 for the position of Chief of the Secret Intelligence Service. Okay, and this is a little application that I would like to show you, and I would like to read out to you. Maybe we can read it together, because in that, of course, this is intended tongue-in-cheek, but there's a serious point behind it, which is that what MI6 are doing now is organized crime. It's obvious, and it's going to rip them apart. It actually will. They don't think it yet because it all seems so stable, but already in the US, the hounds are on their tail. Here in Europe, the hounds are on their tail. MI6 is kind of the focal point, because the Americans will start tracking, as they have now, proven to do, start tracking the links all the way back to Britain. Meanwhile, the Germans, by the time they, wake up and get going, they will start tracking back the BND, and they too, I promise you, will end up with London. There's already indications for that. For example, Michael Shrimpton gave an interview on the Richie Allen show, where he was saying how the MI6 headquarters in London has an office for the German DVD, which stands for Deutsche Verteidigungsdienst. And by the description I've heard, sounds like a total wacko Nazi organization, even more Nazi than the BND. And that organization has an office in MI6. And what was funny is that Michael Shrimpton said, oh, look, DVD has infiltrated MI6. Well, by the time you have an office, it's not really infiltration, as in you have an official presence, right? And surely, once it's in the MI6 building, your official presence has been instated by the owners of the building, right? So by MI6. So it's the wrong way around, Michael. It's not that the BND has infiltrated or the DVD has infiltrated MI6. It's that MI6 set up the DVD and BND, right? That's the way around it goes. But anyway, so all these investigators are tracking the intelligence agencies back, and they will all descend down on London shortly before, hopefully, one day making their way across to Switzerland and tracking down Vatican intel and the vaults, the Vatican vaults here in Switzerland. I predict that by the time people get around to that and do that, the crime cartel will have cleared its vaults in Switzerland and will have transferred them over to the Himalayas. But anyway, we still have to do this sort of investigation. Footnote, the Gotthard tunnel opening was for a train line. And that already told me that there's a huge, big, fat bunker system in the Gotthard Massiv, right? Military bunker system. And I suspect that the train line is now being used to clear that big, bunker before being shipped off to China, because you would put it on trains, you would take it down to the Mediterranean, and from there you would ship it to China, right? Or to where you're going to access all the way up to the Himalayas. But this is, how I see it. And I'm trying to tell the Swiss that the reason why they have been floated up is because they were sitting on top of the Vatican turtle. But the Vatican turtle is now wandering off to China, so they will just, be dropped off. But anyway, so this is just footnotes. The main point is we're all descending down on MI6, and this little organization will be crushed eventually. It will be broken up. It will be ridiculed. Its tentacles will be cut, and people will just, descend down on this. And I can already see that, and there's a lot of circumstantial evidence in the system already obvious to me, and I'm a total, external party. I'm an outside. I don't have access to classified information, but it's already clear to me that this is what's going to happen, and with all this evidence. So the first thing that's going to happen is they're going to get rid of Alex Younger as the head of MI6. And the reason for that, why I already foresee this, is because when the shit hits the fan, the first thing is to remove the figurehead and then bring in somebody else and say, oh, no. I mean, now we stopped. Yes, all this stuff, but it was other people. Yeah, they're over there. They're not here anymore. Well, you can go after them, and they will release their hounds on whoever they take out of the system. Meanwhile, the entire mega architecture stays the same, but they get rid of the figureheads. So I can already predict that by the time the big shit hits the fan, they will get rid of Alex Younger like you wouldn't believe. The same with Andrew Parker, because they will be forced to. It will look really bad. And the face of these guys will become the face of all the abuse, right? Talking about faces, we should just, remind ourselves what these guys look like. Because not many people actually know what the head of MI6 and MI5 actually looks like. So I've got Alex Younger for you. And let me bring up Andrew Parker, MI5. There we are. Okay, so in case you're wondering who is doing this phenomenal, staggering amount of human trafficking around the world, who is coordinating this, these are the people, or some of the top people charged, tasked with this. So this is current chief of MI6, Alex Younger, yeah, and born 1963. And since November 2014, so almost last 5 years, has served as the chief of the Secret Intelligence Service, succeeding Sir John Soros, who in turn, Sir John Soros is the criminal who was responsible for the murder of Gareth Williams and his posthumous mocking in the MI6 safe house, but that aside. So it's this guy here, head of MI6. So remember the face, okay? And this is also the guy who I said last time, or not last time, a few times before, that there was a claim that his son had died. So Sam Younger, it was this one here. I'm just bringing it up now. So there was this article in the press saying Sam Younger, the MI6 chief's son, has died in an unexplained crash on a Scottish estate. Okay, but when you look at the article, it's published on the 1st of April 2019, so it's an April Fool's joke. Okay, so don't take that too seriously. But anyway, I analyzed the image a while back, but it's his son, okay, that they used for this April Fool's Day here, and daddy is involved because he let that crackpot story standing. So there's shit happening around MI6 right now. And then this is MI5, chief of, or the director general of MI5, Andrew Parker. Okay, so it's this guy here. So Andrew Parker is running the domestic British intelligence, the equivalent of the FBI in the United States, and Alex Younger is running foreign intelligence, the equivalent of the CIA in the United Kingdom. Okay, so when I'm writing my job application, I'm applying to replace this guy here. Okay, and I'm fairly confident that his job will be vacated very soon, not least because, because I will make sure it will be vacated. I will do my absolute utmost to actually free the job. So anyway, let's get on to the job application. And I'm saying this because I'm reading this out to encourage you all to start taking the mickey out of these people and actually let them know that whatever the hell they are doing, you can do it so much better. Okay. Now, ostensibly, MI6 should be in charge of, protecting Britain, but they're not. They are tasked with protecting the monarchy, which traditionally is a crime family connected with the Vatican crime syndicate. That's the best way to put it. colonialism, that was large-scale asset stripping and theft and murder of other people around the world. Okay, so now that has produced a lot of loot, and they're out for even more loot, and MI6 is actually tasked with procuring that loot. That's what they're actually doing. Okay, so anyway, let me just show you my job application and see what you think, and then maybe you can vote if you would prefer Alex Younger or me to head MI6 and maybe take it to a new direction. So hang on, let me bring it up. Let me show you. Okay, so let me share my screen, and maybe it's easier if we read it together. Okay, so here it is. I sent it there, and I even sent it by registered post. And here you can see it's written on the 19th of May 2019, the 3rd anniversary of my court case against them. And it goes like this. Dear Sir, Madam, it was with great interest that I watched your stylish new recruitment ad. It spoke to me in a way that I could not get out of my head. And I should add that this was due to how thought-provoking the subtext was, and not because your voice-to-skull technology was echoing it in my ear. After careful consideration of my skills, interests, and past experience, and with view towards the juncture at which MI6 finds itself today, I decided to apply for the position of Chief of the Secret Intelligence Service, not least because I shall take great care that the post be vacated over the coming months. As a matter of fact, you yourselves have already established that I'm extremely special and a potentially lethal powerhouse by placing me into your targeting program at a very young age. Through this, I met a very large number of your officers and assets and have gathered a lot of experience with your methods and the modern classified technologies which you use. While all that was designed to be as impressive as possible, I'm sure, I couldn't help noticing the gaps in your employees' insight and the inefficiencies in your procedures from the very beginning. I'm afraid to say that over the past 2 decades, that appears to have gotten worse. A sharp drop in quality plagues all corporations that undergo a rapid phase of expansion. And with your UK domestic counterpart doubling their government budget in 2003, 21, and here's a footnote to the article, $21 trillion having been diverted from the US budget into covert projects, and as a footnote to Katherine Horton reporting about it, and similar sums being diverted from EU accounts, and again there's a footnote to Christopher Story, aka Edward Hull, reporting about it. I can only imagine what an abysmal plummet into mediocrity your organization must have undergone. That obviously resulted in an ever more cack-handed approach, if you forgive my saying so, in your day-to-day operations and in dealing with cases like mine, to the point where it has become rather publicly obvious that your organization needs urgent help. In contrast, my open approach to intelligence gathering and focus on public interest investigations has gone from strength to strength, with ever more people recognizing the need for full public transparency and international outreach and cooperation in military intelligence matters. Thus, as your organization is in urgent need of a management restructuring, I submit that I would be the perfect choice to lead UK military intelligence into the 21st century, not least because my modern approach and my qualifications would allow you to move with the times and put the emphasis back on intelligence in every sense. As the old adage of war strategy goes, if you can't beat them, join them. And what better way for you to switch over to my winning side of the global war than by hiring me to lead your organization and use my insights into systems analysis, and the physics of complex systems to convert your old boys club focused on filleting each other's male egos into a family-friendly and inclusive high-performance system befitting of the 21st century. I would also be an excellent choice for your organization from the point of view that I'm already implanted with a full MI6 body area network, and I'm hooked up to the Five Eyes synthetic telepathy infrastructure. Over the past 2 decades, your agents already familiarized themselves with the use of the Lockheed Martin software that is interfacing with my body chips, especially my vaginal implants. So my close interactions with your staff have already been tested in the field, and they have built many close relationships with me, so to speak. While I have never worked in strongly hierarchical organizations like yours, as all of St. John's College, University of Oxford, CERN and DAISY had flat collegiate structures, I have studied pyramid organizations sufficiently to know that promotions into top positions can cause substantial friction by triggering envy and malice in competitors. For this reason, and in order to incentivize your senior staff to come on board with my new management directions, I propose to introduce an Employee of the Month scheme, whereby the least performing member of the senior management or the employee who has discredited the organization the most by getting involved in unsavory business plans such as child trafficking, drug running, arms smuggling, and the like, would be tried in a military tribunal and be publicly executed on the front terrace of the MI6 headquarters in London on the first Monday of every month. Mondays are the least favorite part of the week, so this measure should help to motivate staff for the working week and the month ahead. It would also assist with the urban regeneration project that the Vauxhall area is in such urgent need of. Vauxhall Bridge next to the MI6 headquarters would be more suitable to accommodate the large gathering of tourists who would flock to view the spectacle. In honor of MI6 historical beginnings in piracy centuries ago, I propose to erect a platform above the Thames, see illustration number 1, as a walkway out above the water for the purposes of the execution. In order to drop the body into the river after firing a bullet through the head, afterwards, two divers could pull the body down to ensure a graceful submersion for the benefit of the tourists and tow the corpse downstream to be fed through one of London's underwater sewage processing plants. In the interest of health and safety, a bulletproof glass screen along the bridge is required by regulation. Now, I even included a little, diagram of how this should work. And this is the MI6 headquarters here. Just a sec. Sorry, I just had to drink a glass of water. And I discovered, looking at Google Maps, that the Vauxhall Bridge here next to the MI6 HQ is surprisingly broad. So you can see actually that there's a pair of lanes in addition to the standard road. So here you can see the cars going that way and then this bus coming this way, but there are more lanes. And I think it would be perfect for these the first Monday of every month to actually erect a tourist enclosure here, cordon this off for the spectators. I mean, there's plenty of space. And then the execution platform I was talking about here. So this is the front terrace of the MI6 HQ. I mean, this is perfect because you can have all the staff gathered down here and on these balconies, you know, everywhere to watch the execution. So there's plenty of space there. And I also noticed that there's this, let me just make it a bit bigger so that you can see it. There is this wooden thing already sticking out of the water, and it has this bar across. And it's so easy to make a platform by just putting, you know, a wooden platform here, connecting this with the barrier on the here on the shore, and this thing, and that would be just perfect. So you could have, after the military tribunal, of course, lead out the prisoner, and I think there's a gate somewhere. At least this is what it looks like. It's almost like that this is a gate, but somewhere there must be an exit one way or another. You could lead out, you know, this criminal, and then, you know, put him here, shoot him in the back of the head, drop him into the water, and as I said, the divers could pull him down and then, you know, drag the corpse off. And I think that would be a wonderful Monday ritual, really. And this thing is the bulletproof glass screen here. And I just stuck it in to show that I really care about the health and safety of the British public here. So you don't really want any, you know, stray bullets that, I don't know, by some freak, you know, statistical coincidence bounce off some, you know, some parts of the skull and maybe, you know, bounce off and hit somebody here on the shoreline. You never know. So you know, I was trying to demonstrate that I really deeply care about the health and safety of the British public, that I also included the bulletproof glass screen here in these plans. But I think it would work just marvelously. And just imagine all these people in the office buildings here and over there would have a spectacle as well. I mean, you know, these people could make real money by selling their, you know, top floor window to people to watch the spectacle every Monday. I mean, right now you can see that this entire area looks rather dreary right now. Yeah. And imagine, and the other thing that people don't know, let me just show you where this entire thing is. Maybe you can actually see. So SIS headquarters London. It's right here. Okay, so this is the Vauxhall area here in London. That's the Secret Intelligence Service building here, SIS, formerly known as MI6. This here is Vauxhall Bridge. And if I show you on satellite here, okay, so I mean, just look at how much space there is. You've got here a double lane one way, a double way that way, and this is what, a bike lane? So you could cordon off, in principle, the entire bike lane, right? And in principle, you can also have a little gate here at this end and the little gate on the other end, and, you know, sell tickets. Why not, right? How great is this? But when you look at this and you realize that it's actually a walking distance from, hang on, this is Lambeth Bridge. Okay, Big Ben is up here. So you go on a short walk from Big Ben down here. Okay, so upstream along the river. And then you're already here. So imagine every Monday, first Monday of the month, all the tourists who come and visit Big Ben anyway, imagine if they knew that with a short walk through these wonderfully pleasant Victoria Gardens down to here, you know, they could actually see the spectacle. I think this would work marvelously. And right now, if you look at Vauxhall, it has this big fat train line. It looks utterly shit. There are these huge, you know, office blocks with not much to see, right? Barely any greenery. I mean, the entire area is just utterly dreary, right? Look at this. You've got a Tesco Express down there. And I think somewhere here you also have a Waitrose, if I remember correctly, somewhere. But anyway, so this is the general background. And, you know, I think that would be just the perfect spectacle, especially because you have millions of people visit Big Ben every year. But anyway, so these are the plans. And then I said, I think these were very good ideas, actually. I suggest to accompany the execution with a classical salvo, such that 2 historical cannons from the English Civil War would fire a cannonball each into the Thames, followed by the 3rd shot from the gun of the executioner into the head of the criminal. Apart from providing the appropriate crescendo to focus the attention of the selfie-snapping viewers, it would also satisfy the age-old rule of firing 2 warning shots into the air before shooting a person. To support the local British arms manufacturers, leaflets could be handed out at the entrance of the tourist enclosure, informing the onlookers of the precise make and advantageous features of the firearm used for the execution, while allowing potential buyers to see it in action for a worthy cause. In order to alleviate the concerns of the more squeamish members of society, the full list of charges against the culprit should be included in the leaflet with links to publicly viewable evidence, as well as the full list of the victims and the horrific crimes they have suffered at the hands of the psychopathic criminal. Through these measures, I hope to achieve 3 goals for the MI6 restructuring. Number 1, remind the general public, and especially the officers at MI6, that unlike rumors to the contrary, arising out of a confusion with public criminal trials, the death penalty is alive and well in the cases of charges for crimes against humanity brought by a military tribunal against members of the military and military intelligence. And for those of you who don't know, MI in MI6 stands for Military Intelligence Section 6. So they would literally, you know, fall into that category. Goal number 2, show all MI6 officers that their actions, no matter how covert, have real life public consequences for them personally. And I'm sure that it would not be lost on staff that the 2 warning shots fired in the Monday ritual are in fact intended for them, after which they can expect a bullet to the head should they be found to engage in any criminal activity. And goal number 3 is to demonstrate to the British public and the taxpayer that MI6 is an organization that is actively and aggressively practicing accountability at all levels. It was through your work in communist Romania, which I witnessed in my youngest years, that I learned the enormous benefits of public executions. By watching the one your organization conducted of the Romanian dictator Nicolae Ceausescu, which I thoroughly enjoyed. Unlike the rest of the MI6 CIA KGB joint operations in the region, this particular spectacle was extremely popular and can be considered to have been a thundering success. The only shame in the view of the local population was that it was not kept up for a few more installments, eliminating also the head of the police services, the chief of the Romanian Securitate, the top Communist Party leadership, and some members of the judiciary. Nevertheless, it taught me the incredible societal benefit that public executions can have when they are used to eliminate ruthless dictators and thuggish criminals. This is a lesson that I would look forward to employing to free British society and the global population from the worst security threat they have faced to date. Namely, the large-scale use of directed energy weapons, biowarfare, covert non-consensual body implants, and military neurotechnology weapons by rogue elements in the military and military intelligence on the unsuspecting general public. Now, while it is often hard to keep one's promises after taking up a leadership position, I have a proven track record of staying on course and remaining true to my mission statements, even in the face of brutal attacks and the worst adversity. For example, after your agents almost killed my mother in the middle of January last year by smashing her head into the bedside table under radio hypnosis, after my team found a Dr. Paul Marco died under mysterious circumstances a few weeks later in February of the same year, and after my father suffered a heart attack induced by directed energy weapons shortly thereafter, in an attack announced to me 3 days prior via video footage broadcast to my eye implants, I published a video testimony in which I promised to hunt your thuggish agents and officers to the ends of the earth, fuck them up real bad, and get them the death penalty in court, thereby proving my dedication to your organization's core values of fucking and killing. Talking in more practical terms, I have now watched your miscellaneous operations over the past 2 decades, and I can see an urgent need in streamlining the organization and bringing it back, to the original purposes that a military intelligence service should provide for. While I'm aware that the majority of MI6 officers have been working first and foremost as Vatican agents, this will have to change over the coming years with the revival of the nation states, with the implementation of local accountability, and as the Catholic Church has been found to be a transnational criminal organization and its assets are in the process of being forfeited. The Official Secrets Act is another artifact from the global organized crime cartel that MI6 has been traditionally operating under that has to go in the near future. Undoubtedly, it will be a major change for the more senior and elderly members of your organization. However, once the initial anxiety has been overcome and the criminal charges have been brought against the bad apples in your ranks, the rest will sigh with relief and relish the new transparency and openness. Systems analysis and the laws of systems physics also confirm these to be the most stable arrangements and the ones most conducive to the security of the population and the overall wealth generation of the British nation. Over the past 2 decades, I watched with interest the safari tour package holidays that your organization seems to provide to its officers and high-value assets. It was apparently through such a benefits agreement that I was visited and stalked multiple times in Oxford and in Munich by a senior member of the British judiciary in the company of a very large number of enabling operatives. While those episodes were amusing enough in themselves, apart from the mutilation of my legs that I suffered on one occasion when I was infected with a biowarfare agent that continues to plague me to this day, I doubt that the financing of those outings will survive the new accounting standards that will be put in place across the board and will also apply to your organization. I would thus advise sending out the notices of the cancellation of the benefits entitlements and corresponding contracts with the Masonic elderly care facilities and the Crown assets who have traditionally enjoyed those services. I would be especially glad to assist the badly needed expansion of the Five Eyes collaboration. It is obvious that with just 5 eyes, each one of the parties has only one eye. In a collaboration of Cyclops, each of the partners is obviously badly visually impaired and lacking depth perception. Therefore, I would endeavor to open the other eye of each collaborating member organization so that for the first time in history, they can look at what they are doing with their eyes wide open. I would also add extra pairs of eyes from regulators and the general public to look into what operations are being conducted and how. After all, the more pairs of eyes are looking at the problem, the better, isn't it? This would be particularly beneficial as investigators have identified a rogue unit of officers who have infiltrated MI6 headquarters at the highest level. This group of highly dangerous terrorists claims to be related to pharaonic families and call themselves, among others, the warriors of ISIS. They claim that their god, Satan, guides them to take over that organization to use it for their means of endless holy war against civil society. I spent some time studying that group and their methods, and to me, their attitude and warped agenda appears to be the long-term effect of directed energy weapons injuries, neurotech-induced brain damage, and the results of untreated MKUltra trauma. Having studied the effects of MKUltra, I understand that the threatening machismo is really a cry for help from men who were brutally sodomized and watched their favorite pets being murdered in front of them at a very young age. For the past year, I have worked extensively with victims and can thus put in place the required counseling services that your staff members and senior management need to help them overcome their childhood trauma. It would finally create a work environment that is somewhat less rapey than it has traditionally been throughout the darkish past of the organization. For this purpose and in order to save on overheads, I would transfer a large part of your office space and its staff from the Vauxhall headquarters to HMP Belmarsh. There, the particularly challenged individuals should find a safe space and the caring environment that they need to overcome their personal struggles. Perhaps you will agree with me, with my strong belief that care in the community is the best long-term model to deal with the intensive and complex care needs of those unfortunate individuals. Regarding my personal arrangements, I have to admit that despite having toughened up substantially through 3 years of your continuous physical torture, I would still find it too burdensome to have to commute to London for work every day, or even just a single day of my life, to be honest. I also have rather demanding dietary requirements in that I need to eat more than just Waitrose sandwiches. So for those reasons, I would like to apply to work mainly from my home office in Switzerland. I expect that not to be a problem, as I've heard from a retired MI6 agent at St. John's College, Oxford, that in London you have quite a lot of MI5 and MI6 agents working at their home office and at their foreign office, the latter of which sounds like a home office abroad. Of course, I am available to travel freely anywhere in the world at even short notice. I speak 3 languages fluently, namely English, German, and Hungarian, and could even revive my French given a bit of doting care by a sufficiently cute French language instructor. Equally, I'm keen to learn Arabic, Russian, Chinese, or Martian as required. Should you wish to get to know my methods of working with large organizations first, I'm available to assist your organizational restructuring on the basis of ad hoc consulting contracts. In your parlance, that would presumably make me an agent, something that I've been accused of being multiple times by a rather out of control and out of her mind former colleague of mine. I assure you that nothing is more off-putting than getting accused of being an agent without being one, and, more importantly, without having the salary of one. Thus, I thank you in advance for receiving my application and giving it serious consideration as coming from someone who has worked with the utmost dedication on restoring the national security of the British nation and the Western population, and has been tenaciously trying to lead your organization back into sanity and the rule of law with several international projects and in countless public appeals. After all, this is the most important project of the 21st century, and one in which all your previous chiefs of the Secret Security Service have failed abysmally. While you already have the most intimate details of my life on file, please find attached the summary of my CV for your immediate perusal. From Zurich with love, Dr. Katherine Horton. So this is my application to them, and what is absolutely hilarious is that, you know, after I sent it, so this was sent, okay, so I compiled it on the 19th of May, and it was sent 19th of May, I think was a Sunday, if I remember correctly. That's right. And then I didn't get to post this on the Monday. I posted it by registered post on the 21st of May, 2019. Okay. And what happened is that on the 21st of May, 2019, as I posted this at the post office, I have to check the exact sequence and time, but I have a registered, you know, I sent it by registered post, so I've got the exact timestamp. But I think the very moment I posted it, or shortly after posting this, right, that was the incident where my particulars of claim have been deleted. Okay, so for those of you who don't know, I'm working on court cases, and I was writing the particulars of claim for my court case, and I had a document that was over 130 pages long because it contained everything. And I had edited it not that long ago, and I had saved it, and I had, you know, closed the laptop. And this is a laptop that has never, ever been in the internet. I've never connected it to any Wi-Fi system or any Ethernet system. But of course, it does not have a hardware switch like most computers don't. And it has a Wi-Fi antenna that I presume can be activated by GCHQ and MI6 at any moment. So as I was compiling this application, I must have pissed off a lot of people, but when I actually sent it to them, they deleted my particulars of claim. And what is so hilarious is that in the CV that I have sent to them, you know, it goes through everything: higher education, going to Oxford, my PhD, work at Stan, blah, blah, blah. And then at the very end, I'm talking about my current projects, and I have written 2018 to, you know, to date, preparation of court cases for crimes against humanity against all Western secret services, national military leadership, and NATO. And so it's the last, you know, if you're reading this application, you go through, and the very last sentence is that I'm preparing court cases. And they were like, right, no, you're not. And then they deleted the particulars of claim. And I can show you what the particulars of claim look like now, because, hang on, let me share my screen. It's absolutely hilarious. I mean, it's really, really funny. So the original document was massive. And then the document that was there instead is this one here. Right, and you can see I renamed it. This is Horton's Particulars of Claim 2019. It's for the injunction, and this is the hacked version. And they have replaced 130 pages here with 20 pages of just a symbol hash, like this. And that's all that remains of my file. That's what it looks like now. And I have stored this, you know, as evidence. But then if you zoom in, okay, so let me just, hang on, how do I zoom in on here? Let's zoom in to 150. Okay, when you really zoom in and you just see these little squares, you know, the hash is actually like a checkered, you know, pattern. So when you really zoom in here, what you see is this checkered pattern. In other words, it will look eventually like Masonic tiling, you know? And it's literally like a hit by the Masons, you know? It's so funny. Because, I mean, who else would do this? Why exactly pick the hash symbol? And how on earth would you log into a computer that has never been online unless you were a nation state, you know, or had nation state level tools? And most importantly, you had spied on me buying that computer, right? Because it hasn't appeared anywhere on the internet. There is no entry with its, you know, precise make and registry number. So this can only be done by somebody who has nation state level hacking tools and has spied on me buying this laptop, has spied on me writing the MI6 job application, but the MI6 job application was not written on this computer, and then retaliated against me on another computer in direct response, in absolute direct response to the very last sentence of my CV, which was my preparation for the court cases against them, basically, right? So this is absolutely hilarious. So this is the backstory, right? So that's what I had to say. And as you can see, mocking these people will elicit a response. And in the response itself, you will have much more evidence to take to court, right? Because of course, I'm going to take to court that my particulars of claim have been deleted, right? And all this combined with all the other stuff, I can actually show that I keep being assaulted with tools that only a nation state can have, and that transcend the insider, the inside of two virus scanners and the one very famous company making virus scanners, who even logged themselves in and had a look at my machine and couldn't solve the problem. By the way, the computer that got hacked last time is the one I'm broadcasting from now. And what's also a telltale sign, after complaining about this to all and sundry publicly, the mistake either disappeared or is containing itself, or something happened, right? So again, there's direct feedback between me talking and things happening, you know, out there. So anyway, that's what I wanted to show you today. I hope you have a wonderful Sunday. You know, I hope you will imitate these things, and I hope you really get into their faces, because what these self-important men want to do is they want to scare you off so that you don't approach them, you fear them. And the last thing that they would want is that you have absolutely no respect, you know, for them. You're not scared of them, and you just mock them for the pathetic criminals that they are. So, you know, I hope I gave you inspiration, and please, please, you know, join me. I'm sure MI6 has many more positions, and I would welcome many more competitors, you know, who compete with me for the job of head of MI6. But most importantly, help me to bring about that job, that job opening, right? Help me, really help me bring down the current head of MI6 that did nothing to stop my human trafficking, did nothing to stop my targeting. And we need to replace the entire leadership of these so-called intelligence agencies. For the first time, actually turn them into government organizations and go after these criminals, you know. So that's all I wanted to say. It's also in remembrance of Gareth Williams, who, you know, as I said before, I'm convinced was murdered by MI6. But the evidence that we already have is that his body was stuffed into a sports bag by MI6 in an MI6 safe house, right? And he was posthumously humiliated and portrayed as some sort of sex pervert. And that sort of humiliation is a telltale sign, because actually it is MI6 themselves who are stuffed to the brim with, you know, all sorts of sex perverts. And this is just a telltale sign that they're trying to smear their victims with that, with the things that they are actually in themselves, right? It's a classical example of projecting that these psychopaths are doing all the time. So anyway, let's all remember Gareth Williams, and the battle is not over, but he will most certainly not be forgotten. And we will go after MI6, we will go after them in court, and you know, we will get these people into jail for what they have done. So help me and stay tuned and be motivated, and use your, you know, your free time and your wonderful Sunday to come up with ideas how to bring these people down or really mock them into the ground. Thank you very much for listening, and bye for now.